Okay, everyone, very cool to be here. And as Derek said, we've got some amazing content coming up. So I think what we're going to do right now is I think we should jump straight in with our first session of the day, where I get to talk to, I think, almost one of the most kind of future focused people we've got on the show today. And that's Camilla Olson of Savitude. Why am I saying that? Well, Camilla's had a pretty amazing career thus far. She has been a VC, founded 2 biopharma companies, run her own e-commerce label, done an MFA in fashion design, and now founded a tech company called Savitude, who are enabling retailers to serve a broader audience, which of course is great for our sales, but which also has a pretty big kind of ethical sustainability angle to it as well. And that's what we're going to be getting into today, because one of the big things I don't think anyone can ignore, especially in the fashion space, is consumers' desire for those sustainable options. And what better way to look at that than finding technology that can help us do it? So let's get Camilla up on screen. Hello, Camilla. How are you doing today?
I'm just fine. How are you, Chloe?
I'm good. And like I said, I'm really interested to hear more about what you're up to. But as I said, well, let's get started with, you've done an awful lot of things. How did all of that come together to lead to you creating Savitude?
It was actually an accident. It's like the accidental career, right?
So often.
Yeah, right. So it's a funny story, but it all started out with my daughter wanting to be a fashion designer, and I told her that was the worst thing in the world for her to do. And so when she was in junior high school, we battled. Moms and daughters battle a lot, and so right, some people can relate to that. So to call her bluff, I said, okay, I'm going to take you to fashion school so you could see what it's like. And I ended up enrolling. So I,
Wow.
It was a complete surprise to me that happened. But anyway, so I ended up enrolling. And so that took me down the fashion path. And curiosity, and then a sense of outrage got me down this path because, well, I started in fashion because I had developed a bad habit during the dot-com era, because I had done those 2 companies that had done really, really well. And I developed a bad habit of Chanel jackets.
That's quite the bad habit.
Yeah, it was. And then there was a dot-com the bubble burst, and then and I thought I can make it, right? And because I sewed when I was a kid, but I couldn't make it. I hated what I sewed. The design and the quality was terrible. So when I went to that open house with my daughter, I said, I can learn it here. So that's why I went. But I ended up graduating. They, near the top of my class, and did a runway show at Lincoln Center. I got orders, so that led me to have my label. And so they don't teach you in school about fitting different bodies. You just fit that dress form in models. Mm-hmm. But when I had to start fitting real customers, you start learning about different body shapes. And I was really outraged when I figured out what fashion is really all about. And fashion's about the hourglass body shape. Mm-hmm. And I just couldn't stand the thought that really like half of women are not being served. And the further I went along on this, I kept stumbling more and more, finding more data to support that the industry needed to be changed. So quite honestly, I stumbled down this path out of a sense of service to the consumer. First out of, so I can talk a little bit more about that, but that's getting to be too long of an answer.
No, it's good. It's good. You're telling us lots of great insight. But I think the thing which strikes me is you'd created a fashion brand, and during the course of running that fashion brand, you got frustrated about the sizing and the body shape issues. Many people at that point would have gone, right, we're going to make an inclusive fashion line. But rather than doing that, you took the leap and went, we're going to help every fashion line be more inclusive. So why that seems to me, that seems like a far more difficult way of scratching the itch of how do we make this better. So why did you take that leap?
Yeah, two things because of my past. And that is because I had done those two predictive modeling companies that you mentioned. So like I was really mad that women weren't included in clinical trials. So I started a clinical trial simulation company so that they could include women in clinical trials. So you could model things and you could do it, develop drugs for everybody. So I have this sense of wanting to be inclusive. It's kind of a theme throughout my life. But back to the fashion question. So my first solution for this was to build an app. I changed my fashion label from my design to be a marketplace. So I thought, okay, well, I'll get my ego out of it and we'll do a marketplace and build an iOS app and just help guide people to the right silhouettes for their body shape. So we thought education would help other people. And then we realized that really we needed a B2B product, not a B2C software education product. I just realized that it was the wrong solution. But when we built so here's a really interesting thing, is when we built the B2B, this is an AI product to make recommendations, we proved an 11% lift in sales. But when we looked at the data, we found that there were big holes where there were no clothes to recommend for women because nobody had designed for them. So our recommendations are based on aesthetics, what's going to help you look good. And there was nothing in the store to help them look good. Everything would make them look what we would call negative, below zero. And we couldn't recommend any clothes for them at all. And that really made me mad. And I realized that the problem for returns and everything going in the landfill is in the problems in the design studio, that designers have to design for more body shapes.
It's kind of, I find a bit like you, when I find inequalities and all this, I'm just kind of, this is insane. What makes me even more frustrated is the example, like you just said, about this 11% of women for whom there were no clothes being made for them.
Oh, no.
It's a huge part of the market, isn't it? There's nothing being made to make them look good. It's like, how has no one taken that business opportunity?
Well, it's worse than that. No. We developed an 11% lift. So we improved sales 11% by matching clothes better by our recommendations. So we can fix that now. But it's $100 billion, what we call the inclusion gap. It's $100 billion market opportunity. So here's the thing, that we're actually announcing the data tomorrow to the fashion press. We'll see what happens with it. We've done an analysis of all the clothes down the runway in New York, London, Paris, and Milan. Every look of who is ideally flattering. All right, and looked at it, and we proved that that's where the problem starts.
Oh, right. So like that famous scene in Devil Wears Prada, when she takes apart, the reason you're wearing that color is because, and all those fashion things come back to the runway. Yes. The fact people aren't designing for all shapes comes back to the runway as well.
Right, because it never gets in the store because nobody's seen it on the runway. So we look at 9 body shapes and 4 key proportions. And so 4 out of 9 body shapes are distinctly underserved. And looking at that, we call that the inclusion gap, and that's $100 billion opportunity. And there's tremendous area where they're overserved. And I believe that's where it goes into the landfill, because we're making too much variety that's not needed.
Yeah, because I love that the fact there's clearly a business opportunity for serving an unserved market, but then you get the sustainability piece coming in as well, in terms of, well, at the moment the women who are in that group are buying endless things, trying to make it fit and sending it all back, or just sending it to landfill. And that just seems, it must be so frustrating for them, but it's also such a waste of resources.
Well, yeah. Well, it's a waste of, yeah, there's so many ways you can look at this and get outraged, but so many. But I think for me, the important thing is to look at the women who are not being served, and look at the women who keep going to the store year after year after year and not finding anything for them, and imagine how they feel. Like, like, I'm not good enough, that people aren't designing for my body. I can never look pretty. It's not because, like, I remember my whole life I've wanted to just cut off my hips, the top of my hips, because I'm a spoon shape. And I thought, well, if I lose enough weight and well, no, it's just how I'm built. And you just, that's a little thing, but with some people, I can imagine that if they were served clothes that would fit them and help them look great, I would think that women would be much more productive, much more successful, and I think that the world would be a little more balanced.
It's kind of like that $100 billion inclusion gap is the beginning of it, because if we fill that inclusion gap with the right product, then these women are gonna feel more empowered, more confident.
Exactly.
And what that could do is clearly considerably more than $100 billion.
I think it's just another way to keep women down. I really do, and that makes me really mad. And I know I can do something about it, and that I should be retired, but I just can't. I need to fight this fight.
I have a feeling in the next few years there's going to be women all over the world, possibly not knowing that you're the one to thank, but being awfully thankful for the change you're helping to bring in the world of fashion. So how does Savitude, the tech that you've put together, help retailers and fashion brands let's go really simple on the money here, take advantage of the $100 billion inclusion gap?
So there's the challenge, and is, how do we insert some correction or some tool into the system, and that it's been a while trying to figure out how to do this, because I did a lot of research. I talked to almost 100 to 150 designers, and they wanted to talk about it. They were really interested. But when it comes down to using it, they feel guilty. Designers are, they're an interesting breed, but, we feel guilty, like we should be doing this ourselves, and we should be, they don't want the help. They don't, it is the hardest job I've ever had, was being a fashion designer. And I've started a bunch of companies, and worked really, really hard, but this was the hardest job. So I know that they're not the first market to go after, it's the obvious place to go, but convincing them is just really hard. So we figured out that the best place to attack it is through the merchandiser and through the review process, because they set the brief for the collection, and there's a review process, and they can modify the brief through the review process. So we do something called consumer coverage, and we do a review, so to make sure that all of the silhouettes and design details will actually
complement,
yes, the full breadth of your consumers. And that's really in the merchant's best interests. So we're targeting her right now with our product, and what she can do, and we have an edit panel where she can still stay within the designers, because we understand the concept of brand DNA in our technology. So with some slight changes, she can serve a much broader audience.
So who's the core target for your software, given that the designers are a tricky breed to convince of this? Is it the owners of the fashion companies or the press that are your kind of key to opening the ecosystem up to you?
Well, so let's see. Well, if I thinking back as a strategist, okay, but the first people I wanted to speak to, well, first of all, speaking to you as a business to business person is, it's all content marketing, right? And so that's why I'm here talking to you. And so aside from that, I wanted to really talk to luxury fashion first, because if you can get somebody from the luxury fashion community on your side, then that really makes the rest of the world, the rest of the ecosystem easier. So I've been working with them for the last 3 months, and that's been very educational and really helpful, because it's helped me discover consumer coverage. I would never discover that elsewhere. I've been working with a woman who has been the chief merchant at Versace for 17 years.
Wow.
One-on-one with her, and she's been super, super helpful. And some other really interesting people from Milan. And so they've been intimately involved in what we're marketing with right now. So first of all, it's been with luxury in this coverage issue, because they obviously wanted to talk to more people. And then beyond that, we're looking at the on-demand market, because we have the ability, we have this lovely edit panel that can feed right into the production flow, the digital production flow. And so we have a partnership with Gerber Technology, and they have a system in New York, where a demonstration system where they can go from the buy now button to finished product in 1 hour.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. So that combined with your technology means that serving this wide range of body types and this wide range of sizes properly doesn't necessarily mean that the fashion retailer has the argument against it, I suppose, which they've used in the past, of we can't afford to hold that much stock.
Yeah.
Because the clothing is made as it's ordered.
Yeah. So in this system, they're leasing it out to. It's a demonstration system, and they're leasing it out to brands to use. So anybody who's listening who might want to try this out, let me know. Because it's fascinating. It's really, really interesting, because it's on demand, made to measure. I mean, what's not to want there?
Oh, it's the tech we've seen in so many other verticals coming to play in fashion, which is brilliant. But yeah. we're veering away from what Savitude is doing. Yeah. So if someone out there, and I know we've had quite a few comments coming in, especially on the YouTube channel, of people going, yes, this is what we need in fashion.
Awesome.
There's been some awesome comments going on in there. When we log off, go and have a look at the YouTube channel, and because there's some people who are loving what you're saying and what you're doing.
Oh, yay, thank you.
So for anyone who wants to get in touch, who wants to start looking at how they can bring your software and what that makes possible into the mix, how do they get in contact with you and make all that happen?
Savitude.com, and they can always reach out to, we're a small company, so info@savitude.com is probably the best way to go. That's SAVITUDE.
There we go. I think, have I spelt it right there? You should be able to see it going across the bottom of the screen.
I do, yeah. And did you know the origin of Savitude?
No, where does the name come from?
Savvy attitude.
Perfect. Perfect. I love that. Well, look, Camilla, I've got one. Whilst we leave the email address scrolling there, so people can write it down and let us know and
Thank
get in
you.
contact with you. One last question for you, which is clearly what you're doing has a huge opportunity to empower many women, to help us look better. It's also got a huge opportunity for fashion to make more money because they're hitting that gap that you've identified by serving better products, and it's got the sustainability angle of better clothing matched to customer. It means less going to landfill. Which of those three do you think might be the biggest impact when you look back in, say, 5 years, 10 years on what it's led to?
Okay, okay, now that I know where you're going, could you say those three again?
Yeah, sure. It was the sustainability angle, the empowered women angle, and the financial, the gap.
I think the reason that companies will make the change is for the financial reason. They only make changes for money. So they'll do it for that. Women will be happier, and companies will do it for the immediate game of a larger market, because their sales will increase, their returns will go down, and they'll have more loyal customers. So there's a huge economic reason for brands to do this.
And
women will be, so much happier because they'll have clothes that fit them.
Yeah, it's a win on all fronts, really, isn't it? We've had one, just before we say goodbye, Camilla, we've had one question come in, which I want to pose to you before we say goodbye, which is Lloyd Viraroel Triana, I hope I said that right, is saying, do you think Savitude can make a difference in the lingerie and swimwear industry in particular?
In swimwear, certainly. In lingerie, that's pretty well fitted. I would think it could, in terms of getting clothes that would help you look better and not help you look like the baby doll that everyone is supposed to be looking like. I mean, what do women want in lingerie? And that's a category I don't know anything about. I mean,
So we're saying probably, but it's not on your hit list at the minute.
I mean, we haven't addressed it, but I would think that if people are open to it, I mean, personally, I think that's a category that's ripe for disruption, but I don't know how large that market is.
So maybe it's an opportunity for Lloyd to get in contact with you via the email address we've got ticking along there and see how it goes.
Before we go, can I give a shout out to one of your sponsors?
Of course.
Yeah, to Venom. So I actually am wearing their first jacket that they sold, so that they delivered. So I love their product, and I just can't endorse them enough.
Brilliant. We love that. So that's one of the interviews coming up later today. Anyone who wants to be checking that one out. Well, look, Camilla, I have thoroughly enjoyed chatting to you about this. So I must say a personal big thank you to Derek later for organising you in my part of the event. And I hope you get off the back of this some really interesting retailers getting in contact to take things on to the next stage. So thank you for joining us, Camilla. It's been a pleasure.
Thank you so much. I love talking to you too. Thanks. Thanks, Derek. Bye-bye.